Are you tired of using Windows PowerShell as your default terminal in Visual Studio Code? If you want to switch to Bash on Ubuntu, you're in the right place. Today, we will guide you through the steps to make that change. I totally get it. Switching terminals can feel like a hassle, especially when you're trying to streamline your workflow. You're not alone in wanting a more efficient setup. Here's the specific question we're addressing today. One user asked, how can I change my default terminal from Windows PowerShell to Bash on Ubuntu in Visual Studio Code? If this sounds like you, let's dive into the solution together. So, why would you want to switch to Bash? Bash offers a powerful command line interface that many developers prefer for its flexibility and features. Understanding how to set it up will enhance your coding experience. And stick around. At the end of this video, I'll share a bonus tip that will make your terminal experience even better. To change the default terminal in Visual Studio Code, the user should first open the settings. This can be done by clicking on the gear icon in the lower left corner of the window. Next, the user needs to search for the terminal settings. In the search bar at the top of the settings panel, they should type Terminal Integrated Shell. Once the terminal settings are displayed, the user should look for the option labeled Edit in Settings.json. Clicking this will open the configuration file. In the Settings.json file, the user will need to add or modify the entry for the default terminal. They should set the path for Bash on Ubuntu. Finally, the user should save the changes and close the settings file. Now, when they open a new terminal in Visual Studio Code, it should default to Bash. Fun fact, Bash stands for Born Again Shell, a play on words that reflects its origins. Who knew switching terminals could be so interesting? Now, let's look at the answers provided by other users. An alternative approach suggests using the remote WSL extension in Visual Studio Code. This allows you to work directly in a Linux environment. When you open a project in WSL, it automatically uses Bash as the default shell, so no additional configuration is needed. If you want to switch to a different terminal profile, you can go to the Terminal menu, then Integrated, and select Default Profile. From there, you can choose your preferred terminal. That's it for that response. Let's explore another one. An alternative solution shared by another user involves editing the settings.json file in Visual Studio Code. First, open the command palette by pressing Ctrl, Shift, and P together. Then, type Open Settings.json and select it. Next, add a specific configuration for Git Bash. Instead of using Git Bash as the name, use Git Bash to avoid issues. This change allows you to set the path correctly. That's all on that answer. Let's take a look at another one. To change the default terminal in Visual Studio Code, one user suggests creating a folder named .VSCode. Inside this folder, create a settings.json file and specify your desired terminal settings. You can set various terminals like Git Bash, PowerShell, or Command Prompt for Windows. For Linux and macOS, use terminal.integrated-default-profile.linux and terminal.integrated-default-profile.osx respectively. Now, let's dive into a different answer from another user. An alternative approach to changing your default terminal in Visual Studio Code is to use the Integrated Profile settings. This method replaces the older shell option, which has been deprecated. Human, let's check out another perspective from a different user. An alternative approach to changing your default terminal in Visual Studio Code involves editing the key bindings. You can access the key bindings file by navigating to File, then Preferences, and selecting Keyboard Shortcuts. In this file, you can add specific commands to quickly switch between terminals. Here's that bonus tip I promised. Customize your Bash profile to enhance your terminal experience with aliases and functions that suit your workflow. And there you have it. You've successfully changed your default terminal to Bash on Ubuntu in Visual Studio Code. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe for more tips and tricks.